Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's just dive right in, shall we? You know, when we hear stories about the Himalayas, we almost always get this very specific kind of stereotype narrative. We picture tranquil monks, silent snowy peaks, and these deeply peaceful, almost passive communities. But the reality of Kumani and Garhwali culture in the Indian Himalayas, it's actually loud. It's complex, incredibly vibrant, and sometimes wonderfully violent. So today we're going to explore the fierce, dynamic reality of Himalayan myths, the surprising power of its women, and the intense, trance-inducing rituals that tie this whole thing together.
So what exactly do you picture when you think of the abode of the gods? I literally want you to visualize it for a second. You're probably seeing these serene, silent mountains, right? Maybe a quiet yogi meditating by a super calm river. Basically, you're picturing an undisturbed, peaceful utopia. Well, hold on to that image because we are about to completely shatter it.
There's a really striking contrast we need to unpack here. On one side, we have this expectation, serene, placid mountains, and honestly, a pretty monolithic perception of submissive, quiet rural women. But on the flip side, we have the actual, documented cultural reality of the Kumaon region. We're talking fierce female deities, intense blood rituals, and folktales absolutely filled with defiant, cunning wives. It's a massive contrast. So let's start by looking at how this region views the divine.
Section 1. The fierce goddesses of Kumaon. Let's get into it. In Kumaoni culture, female deities are definitely not just sitting quietly in the background. Instead, they represent these violent, active, and absolutely protective aspects of energy. Just think about the sheer power of the regional goddesses. Nanda and Sunanda, according to local myth, were twins of the Chan dynasty who were betrayed and killed, only to reincarnate to seek the absolute destruction of those traitors. No mercy. Then you've got Gar Devi, the deity of rivers. She acts kind of like a local version of Kali and can wreak absolute havoc on enemies if called upon. And Giarani, a historical warrior queen who died fighting in ambush and was literally elevated to the status of a goddess. These deities fought demons, they slew enemies, and they serve as incredibly powerful representations of womanhood. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is that these aren't just abstract stories floating out in the ether, you know? They have deep, deep historical ties, like Nanda and Sunanda's connection to the real Chanda dynasty. Having these fierce, localized origin stories intensely empowers the community. It gives the people of Uttarakhand a divine lineage of strength and resilience that belongs entirely to them. And that brings us to a really fascinating psychological application of these myths. When talking about moments of suffering, Kumaoni women will often say something along the lines of, when a great goddess like Sita had to suffer because of societal pressure, what better behavior could you expect from this world towards you? And listen, this isn't a statement of defeat, not at all. It's a statement of profound solidarity. These divine narratives offer real psychological comfort to Kumaoni women. It helps them navigate a deeply patriarchal society by just acknowledging that the system itself is flawed. I mean, if even the gods are subjected to unfair societal pressures, then the mortals certainly aren't to blame for their own hardships, right?
And this fierce reverence? It's very much alive today in highly practical ways. Take the Gurna Temple, for example. Back in the 1950s, there was this treacherous mountain road causing constant fatal accidents. Well, after a local priest had a dream, they actually built a roadside sanctuary for the goddess in 1952. And get this, to this very day, practically every single vehicle, private or government, stops at this temple to get a blessing for safe passage. The divine is just intimately involved in their daily, modern survival.
Moving right along to Section 2, Clever Wives and the Defiant Women of Kumaon.
So, if the goddesses are this fierce, what are the human women like in Kumani stories? Well, when we look at the non-religious folktales, we see these incredibly multidimensional protagonists who thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, subvert traditional patriarchal norms. We're talking about women instigating affairs, outsmarting the highest caste Brahmins, reforming their foolish husbands, and taking some highly calculated revenge. These women use wit, guile, and absolute street smarts to survive and totally manipulate the rigid systems they're placed in. Take this wonderful, punchy local anecdote. Lobi Brahmana Chaturanari, which roughly translates to greedy Brahmin, clever woman. In this story, a greedy priest demands an iron tool with a single hole in it as payment. Now, he's secretly trying to extort an expensive axe from this woman. Her response? She just hands him a tiny, single sewing needle. It perfectly fulfills his arrogant criteria while costing her absolutely nothing. It is such a brilliant, celebrated act of everyday resistance against authority.
We also see these incredible psychological archetypes emerge in the folklore. Take the story of the unfortunate wife. In it, a woman is so intensely marginalized in a polygamous household that she essentially orchestrates the murder of her husband and her rival wife, blames the whole thing on robbers, and then just flees to start a brand new life. Or there's the cynical old woman who constantly has to save her bumbling, idiot son from disaster. You see, these aren't just simple little morality tales for kids. They are complex psychological tools that women actually used to navigate and sometimes mentally escape a very, very rigid society.
Which brings us to Section 3, Jagar, Awakening the Spirits.
This is where we hit the ultimate intersection of psychology, myth, and everyday survival, Jagar. Now, Jagar literally translates to awakening, and during this vibrant, totally trance-inducing communal ritual, the priest, or Jagariya, sings these epic ballads of the local gods, all accompanied by the traditional dole and damo instruments. And this repetitive, thunderous drumming, it induces genuine altered states of consciousness. Participants enter a trance where they scream, leap, and sometimes they even lick red-hot pokers or plunge their bare hands straight into fire without sustaining any injury. It is just pure, raw, collective energy.
So, what exactly are they awakening in these rituals? Well, there are three main types of yagar. First, you have the Dev Yagar, where benevolent deities are summoned to bless the family. Second is the Bhut Yagar, where the spirit of a deceased person is actually summoned to address their lingering grievances. And finally, the Masan Yagar, where malevolent or evil spirits are invoked, often with this kind of mocking tone, to strip them of their power. Each one serves a very different, very specific spiritual and emotional purpose.
Now, what's really fascinating to me is the Hantia Jagar. It's specifically performed for a restless soul, someone who died tragically or with unfulfilled desires. I want you to imagine a grieving family sitting around a sacred fire, literally using the Jagariya as a medium to speak to the dissatisfied spirit of their lost loved one. The priest will sing these deeply emotional songs, guiding the spirit to look at their family, look at their home, and finally just find peace. It's an incredibly profound, highly structured method for a family to find real emotional closure.
All right, moving to Section 4, the psychology of ritual, or communal therapy.
So why does all of this matter to us today? Listen to this haunting lyric from the Nanda Devi Jagar. The sacred fire is not set, the world is in confusion. The sacred fire is not set, the people have forgotten. Let that idea breathe for just a second. It expresses this deep, universal grief. It's a longing for spiritual renewal in a world that feels totally chaotic and broken. When the community sings this together, they are collectively processing their own anxieties and their own sorrows.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. These traditions provide tangible, real-world psychological benefits. Jagar creates a socially acceptable, totally safe space for the expression of intense, overwhelming emotions. Emotions that might honestly otherwise tear a person apart. It allows for the communal purgation of grief, and it reinforces that feeling of divine protection in what is a very unpredictable world. These aren't just old campfire stories, folks. They are active, living tools for mental healing and social negotiation.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought when you consider the complex, multidimensional women in Kumani folklore who totally refuse to be victims, and when you think about the Jagar rituals that provide these profound communal spaces for processing grief and trauma. It really makes you wonder, are these ancient Himalayan traditions actually more progressive and psychologically advanced than our modern societal norms? Really think about that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and keep questioning what you think you know.